Of all the questions that I've dealt with about what it means to be human beings in the local parish, the one that Collins deals with in original sin has got to be the most perplexing. Mothers and grandmothers are just appalled, I have found, by the concept that their little child, especially their little grandchild, is anything other than innocent. And I found that we have to make a distinction between innocent and corrupt. Innocence means that they have not committed any sin, that they're lovable, adorable, and just so cute. And they really are. But corrupt, they are. And my contention for that is this. Everything a little baby does is is about themselves. Everything. I'm wet. I'm dry. I'm hungry. I'm too cold. I'm too hot. It's all about themselves. Now we may argue that it is what is necessary at that stage of their development, but nevertheless, it is that I-ness, that selfishness, that focus completely on themselves that will lead them to make an idol out of themselves, to be self-worshipers, and to follow after their own designs. And that's where the corruptness comes in. They are innocent, and absolutely so. That's why we do not believe that children do not go anywhere except to heaven if they die, and God help us if they do. But there is that corruptness that will later lead them to sin, and that is what original sin is. It is not sin in and of itself in the sense that it carries condemnation or anything other than corruptness. It does not taint their innocence. It merely says it's this bent, as one of the hymn writers put it, this bent to sinning that is so deep within them. It is, as far as corruption goes, a total defacement. We are not capable of being anything other than selfish if it were not for the grace of God. We're dead, and yet there's an aliveness about us, and that needs to be explained. And it is explained in the Wesleyan way by prevenient grace. You know, we've seen this again and again, that there's prevenient grace, justifying grace, sanctifying grace, and glorifying grace. But it's prevenient grace that perhaps does the most for the entirety of mankind, because it is the only type of grace in the Wesleyan lexicon that is irresistible. You have to accept it, at least on some level. That grace gives us 5 changes that Collins points out on page 78. It's the basic knowledge of the attributes of God. We have some sense that God is good and God is willing to forgive. We may lose that sense with the deeper that our own sin goes, but because this can be sinned away as well. But nevertheless, we have that sense. We have a reinscription of the moral law back in our hearts. That reinscription tells us what is right and what is wrong. It's different from a conscience, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it is that ability to know what is right, to know what is moral. It is a conscience, gives us our conscience in the sense that we know not only what is right and what is wrong, but we feel bad about it when we do bad things. It's not good for us. And that, or we don't feel good about it. And that really is what a conscience is. My grandmother had a saying that person seared away their conscience. And indeed you can. And the effects of prevenient grace can be sinned away, if you will. But they're all there for all of us. A measure of free will has been graciously restored. We can choose to do the good. We can choose to do even the good for right reasons on occasion. And that's where we find this. Family, there's a restraint of wickedness. And I will admit to you that there are certain human beings throughout history that we wonder if they were restrained from any wickedness at all. Adolf Hitler, certainly an American way of thinking, is one of those. Joseph Stalin perhaps would be another. Pol Pot might be another. Nevertheless, there's a restraint if you look at it from the whole humanity standpoint. Who among us can say that if left to our own devices, we as human beings would not have destroyed ourselves completely long ago? That would have made ourselves extinct. I believe that extinctness, that ability to completely annihilate ourselves, and the fact that we haven't, is for me the greatest statement that prevenient grace is still operating in all of the world. It is the only part of grace that Wesley called irresistible, and thank goodness that it is. I hope this helps clarify the concept of original sin and how prevenient grace works in and on original sin. For it has truly been the most plaguing part about who we are as human beings that I've had to deal with